Everybody who's joining us. I can see people popping into our virtual room, which is great to see. My name is Kate Robson-Brown, and I am the director of the University of Bristol Data Science Institute, the Jean Golding Institute. We are hosting this event and 39 others as part of our University of Bristol Data Week Online 2021. So we're just going to wait one more minute to make sure everyone's in, and then we'll get going. Okay, so I think we'll get going. I think there might be a few more people just joining us. Yeah, let's get going on the hour. So again, welcome to University of Bristol Data Week. This is day 2 of our packed week of events, training events, talks, workshops, networking events like this. My name is Professor Kate Robson-Brown. I'm director of the University of Bristol Data Science Institute, the Jean Golding Institute, and it's my enormous pleasure to be hosting this event today. I have a few slides and introductions to make right now, and then we'll move on to the substantive part of the morning. So first of all, a quick welcome from me, just to let you know that this session is being recorded. We hope that you've been able to read the JGI Code of Conduct, and I think Lily, our coordinator, will be putting a link to that in the chat as well, in case you haven't had a chance to read it. We would be grateful if you could mute your microphone while the event's going on, unless encouraged otherwise by the presenter, speaker, or me, the chair, to speak. This also reduces background noise and feedback as well. So we're grateful if you could mute your microphone. If you could complete the registration and feedback forms, that would be great. Feedback form particularly, it's always really helpful to us to have feedback from our participants, our speakers, and our audiences to find out what you really enjoyed, and also to get your suggestions on events that you might like to have in the future, on topics or kind of collaborative areas that we could tackle for future events, future data weeks. Also, it would be great if you could introduce yourself in the chat box. It's a shame that we can't do this event face-to-face, but there is also a silver lining. It means that we can welcome a wide range of partners, from international partners from around the world, to come and join us. So it's nice to do some networking where we can. So if you'd like to put your name, your role, and maybe where you're from in the chat box, that would be great. We're going to be using Slido for the question and answer. So if you'd like to join us at slido.com and type in this code 861028, which I think Lily will put in the chat again, then you can write your questions, and I will collate those as we go through the session and read them out for our speakers so that we can kind of group them together into topic areas. So if you could use that Slido function for question and answer, that would be really helpful for us. A little bit of information and background about the Jean Golding Institute. Many of you are already friends of the Institute, and so you know all about us. But for those of you who are new, welcome. We are one of 5 University of Bristol research institutes. These research institutes sit outside of the faculty structure, so we have independence to pursue our own agendas, but we all have the basic remit of developing multidisciplinary research communities for our topics. Ours is data science, data intensive research, and AI. And we've existed for about 5 years. I've been director for 4 of those. And in that time, we've developed 4 main strategic priority areas for our activities that you can see represented on this infographic here. So those 4 are the verticals in that image. We're particularly interested in supporting work which involves data science, data-intensive research and AI and social challenges. In data visualization, actually it's slightly broader than that, because we also include within that materialization and realization of data. This is all about communicating data science and data analytics to as wide an audience in as much of a kind of explainable way as possible. The third vertical is reproducibility and data governance. So this would include the open data agenda, other aspects around ethics and consent, and all aspects of reproducibility. And then the fourth one is fundamental or foundational research, and this is primarily supporting the work of mathematicians, statisticians, computer scientists, software engineers. And we deliver all those 4 vertical priorities through the cross-cutting support mechanisms that you also see on this infographic. So, for example, we put on events just like this, which help to develop the communities. That would also include networking, face-to-face networking events, poster sessions, all kinds of ways of engaging with as diverse a range of participants as possible. We also deliver a lot of training and professional development. Obviously in Data Week, we've got a lot of training events happening in a very short period of time. But in fact, we put on training events throughout the year, some in collaboration with our close partners, the Advanced Computing Research Centre, ACRC at University of Bristol. And we also create bespoke events for particular research communities, for example, Earth observation or arts and humanities. The third mechanism of engagement you see there is the Alan Turing Institute. So the Alan Turing Institute is the National Institute for Data Science and AI, and the University of Bristol is one of 13 UK universities who are formal partners for the Alan Turing Institute, and the Jean Golding Institute at Bristol is the portal for that relationship. So part of my work as director, and Patty Holly, who's on the call, who is the University Liaison Manager, part of her work is to manage that relationship and make sure that we bring as many opportunities to our research community in Bristol as we can through that partnership. And then the fourth mechanism is what you see there as Ask JGI. So this is like a data science surgery service. So all researchers can email us, can give us a ring and ask their data science query. And we have a team of data scientists, research software engineers, who will engage with that query and provide a response. And sometimes that's very easy and we can just use a frequently asked question from previously. Sometimes it requires training people up. Sometimes it might result in a collaborative project being developed, and we have many of those. And in fact, our data science research software team are all partially funded through those research projects, many of which have arisen through our Ask JGI service. So this is our schedule for Data Week, a bit of a plug for all the activities that we're running this week. This is day 2, we're on Tuesday, and you can see that we've got about 40 events over the 5 days, many running in parallel, and there's a mixture of training events, which you can see there in the blue, networking events, some of which you can see in green, and talks and presentations, which you can see in yellow. So we've tried to create a program. We've been working on this for about a year to create a program which will engage with people working in all aspects of the data science pipeline. So everything from data capture right through to analytics and data communication and visualization. We hope there's something there for everyone. And today, if you'd like to kind of to reinforce some of the contacts you might have made at this session, we're running a lunchtime networking event from 1 till 1:45, which is going to be held on the platform Remo, and it'd be great to see any of you there. Nothing formal, but just a drop-in session to come and say hi, tell us about your data science interests, and see if we can kind of create some connections for you. Just a quick shout out for all our partners that have supported us through the development of this data week. Strathmore University, there you are on the bottom right. We're really grateful to all the people that we've co-produced these activities with. There are academic organisations, industrial partners, NGOs, and policymakers all involved in these events, and it's a particular pleasure to be able to work with you to put on such a wide and kind of diverse range of events to help us celebrate data science in Bristol and beyond. So thank you very much for joining us in this. And we'd like to think that all of you would be able to stay in touch with the University of Bristol and the Jean Golding Institute. We want to maintain as kind of diverse a family of data scientists as possible within our community, and there are many ways you can do that, summarized on this slide. So, for example, subscribe to us, look at our Twitter feed. We're constantly providing information about activities and events that we're running. You can find us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our newsletter, have a look at the JGI website and look at our regular blogs, or contribute a blog if you'd like to. And another opportunity coming up as we look forward and a little bit further in time is to our showcase in 2022. So we always planned to have a showcase last year. We do showcases quite regularly, but obviously with the pandemic, we had to postpone it. But we've now confirmed that we're going to be running it on the 17th and 18th of February 2022. It will be a blended event, a mixture of face-to-face meetings and online events. The face-to-face meetings will be happening at a museum, an industrial museum in the centre of Bristol, down by the harbour side, which is known as Emshed, and you can see the photograph there. And this is a partnership that we've worked with the museum many times in the past, so it'd be really nice to be able to host some of our face-to-face meetings there, and it will mean that we'll have a really good connection to the local community as well and be engaged in all kinds of community events. It will be a very family-friendly event. There will be events there that are suitable for school children, for example, and we hope to be able to co-produce some events with our local community. There'll be lots of opportunities to connect and network and socialize, I hope, in person and online. So if you're interested in that, please save the date, and we'll tell you more as the months go by. And before I hand over to our speakers today, I just wanted to say a little bit about the Bristol-Strathmore partnership, which is a partnership in data science. It had long been the ambition of the Jean Golding Institute to establish some formal partnerships with strategic international partners. But we never wanted those to be empty relationships. We always wanted those to have a dynamism and a meaning for the participants. And we have two international partners. One is the Institute for Statistical Mathematics near Tokyo in Japan. And with them, we do a lot of work around foundational methodologies. And the other partnership is the partnership with Strathmore University in Nairobi in Kenya, which we're celebrating today. This partnership was formally signed back in 2019. And a group of us from the Jean Golding Institute came out to join you in the university in Nairobi, and we participated in a data week at home for you. And we've got some lovely photographs here of some of those events. So you can see at top left there, that was all of us signing the paperwork. And then you can see the group that took advantage of the training opportunities that we held at Strathmore on the right there, and then some more in-action shots of us actually holding some of the workshops and training with our staff and students with us. And it was a hugely enjoyable week. And during that week, we not only delivered a great deal of training, but we also formalized plans for how to take the partnership forward. Now, obviously, the past year and a bit has been very difficult for everybody, and we have not been able to make the trip back out to Nairobi that we had planned to and had funding for. But despite the difficulties of the last year, the partnership has already won some funding to take some projects forward. We have a GCRF Knowledge Enhancement Grant. GCRF stands for Global, oh, I've forgotten what the C stands for, Research Framework.
Challenges.
Thank you. Challenges, Global Challenges Research Framework, Knowledge Enhancement Grant. And this has helped us begin to develop a focus on research around rural analytics in collaboration with our vet school and Professor Andrew Dowsey, particularly in the vet school here in the University of Bristol. So the purpose of this is around capacity building and focusing on some topic areas for research. It's resulted in some joint collaborative projects around, for example, IoT for agriculture, some joint development around apps for agri-tech, which I'm sure you'll hear more about in a moment. And we have in the background some longer term plans to broaden out some of those activities to thinking about some urban analytics as well. As I say, we had intended to have a physical face-to-face meeting. That was turned into an online event, but that was very successful, and we held that back in 14th of May last year. But basically, the collaboration seeks to support exchange of people and ideas, to develop online training, to support early career researchers in both our communities, to provide further training opportunities and an introduction to involvement in research, and a forum for doing excellent data science, tackling some difficult and challenging questions that have high priority to our communities today, with a particular focus on societal benefit, food security, education, and the environment. So at that point, that was all I wanted to really do to kind of introduce our partnership and why this is so important for us. I see this event as a fantastic example of knowledge exchange, but also a celebration of the data science work that's going on within the partnership. And it is, you know, a huge pleasure for me to be able to introduce our speakers today. And we're going to begin with an introduction from Lorna Mutegi, who's, I think, going to give some background and some ideas about the focus for the research that's going on at Strathmore. And then we're going to pass over to a group of early career researchers who are going to give us summaries of some of the work that they've been doing, which is great. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to you, Lorna.
Thank you very much. Please confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, coming through loud and clear. Great.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Lorna Mutegi from Strathmore University, and I am part of Untitled Africa. So Untitled Africa is an ICT research center, and we are part of the larger Strathmore University community, but our focus is on ICT research and innovation. And we are also, we provide support to incubators through our business incubation. And also we do research in various thematic areas, which I will mention in my presentation as we go along. So a brief of an overview of who Untitled Africa is. So we have been in operation for the last 10 years, and our main vision is to be a center of excellence in research and innovation in ICT for development in Africa. And our mission is to provide an environment that promotes technology innovation and provides business support structures and policy direction to harness the potential of ICT as a genuine tool for sustainable development, especially in Kenya. And our focus areas, we have 4 main focus areas, and we do a lot of work in ICT research and innovation in a number of thematic areas that I will mention later. Also ICT outsourcing, where we offer ICT solutions to local and global institutions to address local and global development challenges. We are also doing work in ICT policy research, and also entrepreneurship and incubation through our business incubator, where we are able to support young innovators with great ideas that, again, address local development challenges here in Kenya. So we focus our work in these thematic areas. We have a team working on e-health projects. We also have a team working on data science, which is part of the team that is working together
So Lorna has frozen for me. Is it just me or are there others?
No, she's frozen. She is frozen.
Okay, let's give it a few seconds and see if we can get her back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back. You froze there for a moment, Lorna, and we lost your screen share.
Sorry about that. I don't know where I left you guys. I'd really progressed.
About a minute back, previous, yeah.
You were talking about data science, and that's who's working with this contingent.
Oh, yes. Yes. So here at iLab Africa, we've grouped ourselves in various research groups. And one of them is the data science team that is working with you in this particular event. And we also have a team on that is working on projects on e-health, Internet of Things, a business incubator, digital learning, cybersecurity. We also have a team working on projects under consultancy and outsourcing, and also internet policy and governance. So I'll briefly mention projects that we are working on under each of the research groups. So under e-health, we have projects such as the cervical cancer project, and also the BLISS project, where we were able to provide an information system that is able to support the work that goes on in a hospital lab, and we can be able to map in when a specimen comes into the lab and when it goes to the doctor and when diagnosis is made. And also we work with various partners, and one of them is Horizon 2020, and also CDC, IBM, and also the Ministry of Health here in Kenya. And then data science, we have trainings, and one of them is the Master of Science in Data Science, which we launched recently. And also we have short courses where we are able to train people as young as people who have just graduated from high school, and we're able to give them these digital skills that are very important, especially as they begin their career in computer science. And one area that we focus on is data science. Also, we've done a number of trainings for professionals and in collaboration with various companies, and one of them is Safaricom, Equity Bank, and Kenya Airways. Under Internet of Things, we've done projects such as the TV Whitespace project, and our focus there is to try and address the digital divide gap, which is as a result of inaccessible internet, especially in rural areas, and we're trying to leverage on unassigned TV bands that can be used to provide internet to these unreached people in Kenya. And there are many other projects where we are working with Cisco ITU through the Giga project, Liquid Telecom, Olpejata Conservancy to track animals, and many others. And you will notice under each department, we do have trainings. And in IoT, for example, we have a training that we run together with Cisco. And what we do there is we try to upskill people and also offer training on Internet of Things. And this course has been very, very important in trying to fill in the digital skills gap that we are currently experiencing here in Kenya, especially in the area of Internet of Things. Also, cybersecurity is another area that we are working on, and we've just opened the Thai FinTech center, and through that center we are able to support companies to be able to ensure that their systems are safe, and we can be able to do for them penetration testing and many other services in the area of cybersecurity. Again, in that unit, they do run trainings where we are able to train people, professionals, students on concepts such as blockchain and many other areas such as cybersecurity and ethical hacking. And then digital learning, through this team, we've been able to address the issue of making education accessible to previously unreached people, especially during these times of COVID. So we've been able to provide access to learning through the platforms that we deliver to various schools in collaboration with various partners that are in the same line, such as Google and Microsoft. And then consulting and outsourcing service, we've been able to also support county government through our system, the county revenue collection system. And we've been able to help county governments be able to address the issue where they're not able to map out how much revenue has been collected. And through this system, they're able to get data that is real time, and they can be able to know how the county is doing in terms of revenue. And again, in that unit, we do run short courses. And then also internet policy and governance, and at our business incubator, which we call at IBIS Africa. And in that center, we are able to offer facilities, office space, mentorship to young entrepreneurs who are working on various thematic areas such as e-health, agriculture, data science, and we're able to give them the support that they need to be able to develop solutions that are sustainable and that can be able to earn them a living. Then I think that's basically what we do here at iLab Africa. Just in conclusion, our focus areas are just 4 key focus areas, and that is we offer research and innovation, ICT outsourcing, policy research and entrepreneurship and incubation, and that is done through the various units or research groups that I've just mentioned. And we are very much delighted and happy to be collaborating with Bristol in this event, and I wish you all the best and success in this event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorna. We have a couple of questions appearing in the chat. So first of all, asking how big your data science team is at Strathmore. Are you still there, Lorna?
Sorry, I was speaking on mute.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
I was speaking on mute. We have one of the data science team members here, Kelvin, right? I think I've gotten the name right, yes. Kelvin, I think he can be able to tell us more about his team and also the work that they're doing there. Kelvin?
Okay, thank you, Lorna, for that. So currently our team is, it's divided into 2. So there is the research part that deals with the data science, the masters in data science part that includes Dr. Shelby Daniel on the other end. Then we also have the side that deals with research in terms of projects and trainings. So with that side, we are joined with Joseph Kitonga. We are joined with Alvin Igobwa, and we also joined with what we have here. We also joined with Jeremy Gashanga, and we are also joined with Dr. Koroldo in absentia as well. So that is mainly part of the main team. Then we also have our interns, and we also have some of them here. So that's actually a brief of the team.
That sounds great. So you have internships every year, do you? And who are able to participate in some of those activities?
Yes, even we actually even had a data science hackathon last year, which was a big part of securing some of the interns that we have currently.
Yeah. And the other question I can see is about hardware. So do you have any particular HPC resources that you use or other kinds of hardware solutions in your team? I don't know who would be best placed. Yeah, Kelvin?
Was that directed to the data science group or iLab in
Yes,
general?
the data science group, I think, yeah.
Currently, I would say no.
Is that something that is a challenge for you, or something that you'd like to develop, or are you able to address the data science projects that you have with the resources that you have? Fine.
For that, I wouldn't say I would be in a position to answer that accurately, but depending on the projects that we do have, you'd find that not all of them would require us to actually use HPC. More often than not, you'll find us we'll be using in-house computing.
Yeah, okay. Right, thank you. So thanks for that. So now we're going to move on to a kind of round table of talks. And I think the first person presenting is going to be Alvin. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, great. So Alvin, if you could introduce yourself and maybe share your screen, that would be great.
Oh, definitely. I'd have to wait for Lorna to stop sharing.
Ah, yes.
So that I may be able to share. Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, looking good.
Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Alvin Igobwa, a benefactor actually of the Bristol-Strathmore Data Week. I attended the 2019 session and fell in love with data science from then. So if you needed some encouragement, this is it coming from me. I'm currently working with the data science department here at iLab, as Kelvin had already mentioned, and have been, my position is currently a junior data scientist, moving to a business intelligence analyst. So the project I'll be taking you through today is a flood mapping project using HECRAS and digital elevation models, with the case study being done in Narok in Kenya. Okay, so this project we're doing it in collaboration with Trigger, with the Strathmore iLab team. Yeah, so allow me to just put a laser pointer. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so just a brief introduction to some terms to shed some light into this area. So a flood is generally, I think all of us have been able to see a flood or experience a flood somewhere in the news or in whichever form. But for a general description, so a flood is an overflow of water in an area that is usually dry, often as a result of heavy rainfall or other unrelated weather events. So this is very key, especially now for the case study that we're looking into, which I'll get into much later. Now, HECRAS stands for the Hydrological Engineering Center of River Analysis System, which is a computer program that models the hydraulics of water flow through natural rivers and other channels. So this was the key instrument that was used in the creation of the flood maps that we'll be seeing quite later. The flood maps now are an essential tool to avoid or minimize the damage to life and property caused by a flood, and also can be used for communicating flood risks. More on that later. And now finally, DEMs, as we said earlier, is the digital elevation models, which are the 3D computer graphic representation of elevation data to represent terrain of a given area. So that being said, so just a brief background on floods in Kenya. So floods in Kenya have led to the displacement of over 14,000 people and at least 29 people in a span of 1 month. That was in 2019, according to the the UNOCHA. And specifically now in Narok Town, it has led to the cause of 75 damaged houses, 88 deaths, and 29 injuries, 3 missing in a span of 5 years from 2010 to 2015. Now, what's very interesting about Narok as well is the fact that Narok is contained in a low-lying area. It's found in the middle of an escarpment. So, and the main river that passes through Narok, there's a river that passes through Narok town. So Narok is located at the downstream part of the river. So you can imagine all the water is flowing through the main town, and it has led to a lot of floods. So the rainfall plays a huge role, but the river as well is the main cause of floods. So the objectives for this project was to measure the potential flood spots, hotspots for flooding in Narok Town, to model the major cause of flooding in Narok Town, and to further estimate the damage that can be caused by flooding. Right. So the methodology we proposed, so we broke it down into 3 key areas. So first of all, the data. So our primary source of data was the digital elevation model obtained from the USGS, so the United States Geological Survey, the Earth Explorer. So the digital elevation model is able to acquire one of 30-meter resolution. So not so great, but still is the only ones that were available. So we've been working, although towards obtaining now digital elevation models that have a high resolution by taking advantage of unmanned aerial vehicles, which we're going to carry out the analysis with. So the geometry creation involves creation of a river center line, a river bank, a flow path, and a channel cross section. We'll see that more in detail later. Sorry? Okay. So that's the geometry that is needed. And then now finally the model creation. So the final output that will be gotten from here will be the flood maps that will be generated from a headcross program. So the main model that we'll be using will be the unsteady flow analysis system, because contrary to the steady flow analysis that you might be using, or is quite preferred, since the flooding in Narok Town is quite sporadic, and unsteady flow is highly recommended for this area. So this is what a digital elevation model looks like. So on the left, you can see how the main area, which is highlighted in red, is the low-lying area. And that path that you're seeing there is the path that now the main river passes through. And you can imagine a town is located at the dead center. Now, looking at this map, you can see it just a bit better. Now, over here, you can see, though not so clearly, I apologize, something might have happened, but the cross sections and the baselines of the river that I had mentioned before are being highlighted over here, with the town being located here around the red dot. So you can see the merging of the two rivers is happening around the Narok town, which is quite dangerous for the town as well. So this is how it generally looks. Yeah, so now going deeper into the river cross section. So you can see here from this imagery that is formed over here. So what this is showing us is how generally the riverbed tends to look like, with the green area indicating the water level, and the red dot over here, I hope you can be able to see it, it indicates now where the river bank is stopping. So what is happening here on the yellow side is now the overflow, now the spilling of the water once the water is coming in. So this given location is around over here. So we can see that now around this point, we're seeing there's a lot of spillovers on the left. So this will be, you'll be able to see this much more clearly in the next slide. Because here now, you can see now the general area is tilted to the left. So when water is coming in, so it splashes very heavily on the left, okay? So yeah, so now this is what I was talking about. So looking at how the river is flowing through, your right should technically be the left, should be the left of what I showed now on the other side. So you can see a lot of flooding is located here, which is the dead center of the town. And specifically here, we're seeing now, here's where now water is traveling at such high speeds. So what you're seeing here is the river cross sections that we used in order to build the flood model. And The areas in blue indicate the water depth level, which is ranging from around 0 meters to 2.3 meters. And we recently went to the field and we clarified that around this area is where now floods have been. This is now where floods are quite prevalent around the stadium, which is over here. I hope you can be able to see, and around here as well. All right. So yeah, so as I was saying earlier, so what we found is that the area lying on the left of the bank is the one that is most vulnerable. So the left of the image, the right of this previous image. And you can see that generally the topography is probably the main cause of inundation now in the lower reaches. As water is traveling from upstream, it accumulates in such high volumes so that by the time it's reaching downstream, it's already broken the bank and now is spilling to the right of the river, causing a flood to occur in the given area. So we had also mentioned regarding the economic destruction evaluation. So the map that you're seeing on the right here was extracted by using QGIS, which is a quantum geographic information system, to be able to isolate the given buildings and the given roads that are there in Narok Town. And you can see through these black dots and the blue areas that are shaded represent the given flood spots. So we can see there are a lot of buildings here being heavily influenced, and specifically this is a main highway that passes through Narok. Excuse me. And the main Narok is the one that is usually linked to the Mara. This is usually heavily detrimental to the tourism industry in Narok Town, given that it's one of the primary sources of income for the county as a whole. So you can see that it also limits movement quite a lot, and especially damages as well the drainage system in Narok Town. Okay. So modeling in itself wasn't enough, so we decided to go to the field and now carry out a citizen science, majorly borderline participatory geographic information science. And in this instance, we're able to see that the civilians were clarified that the main cause of floods in Narok Town is actually the topography, which now satisfies the model that we had earlier shown. So the topography seems that it's the main cause of floods, and furthermore, also the inadequate drainage systems that can be able to alleviate the amount of water that is coming through to Narok Town. So these are things now we need to start looking into and even advising now the given county government there. So the civilians also indicated that the floods mainly occur during the MAM season, which stands for the March, April, May season, and the October, November, December season, which the MAM represents the heavy rainfall season, whereas the October, November, December season represents the short rain season. So you can see, despite of it being heavy rains or short rains, it still leads to a flood because of the accumulation of water moving downstream quite quickly. So now lastly is now looking at so we've been able to create the model, we've justified that the model is consistent with what the people are saying. So what's next? Yeah, so we are now in the works of developing an early warning system. So due to the high fluctuation of the flood occurrences, an early warning system is really required. On conducting the citizen science, the civilians and the citizens currently living there heavily requested that they would want an early warning system, preferably being sent a text blast being sent to the given people to alert them that a flood has already occurred, that a flood is oncoming. And we're doing this by trying to implement two things, either by taking the IoT sector of implementing the use of sensors in the upstream of the river so that you can be able to indicate for the people who are in downstream that a threshold has been met, a flood is probably imminent to occur. And then another method is also trying to apply now machine learning algorithms to be able to kind of predict the current weather, and after predicting the weather, we can further predict if this rainfall will be sufficient now to indicate to predict a flood that is likely to occur. So with about 40% of the demographic really requesting it, it's something that we are currently looking into in this project. So that's it. for me. So I really am very, very delighted to have presented here in this conference. Having been a student and now presenting, it's really such an amazing feeling. So I'm very happy to take on any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much, Alvin. And lovely to know that these data science weeks work. Encourage people into careers in data science. That's fantastic. I can't see any questions on the Slido, but I'm just going to kick off by asking whether your project has had a historical dimension as well. So in other words, has flooding changed within people's living memories in those communities?
Please come again.
Is there any historical dimension to the work? So have you looked at whether or not the flooding has changed by looking at old Earth observation data?
Oh yeah, so the problem about now Narok town especially is that there are hardly any flood repositories, or rather, if they are, they're quite limited. So we have to go with another citizen science report, which now we are using, or publishing by the Red Cross or the UN after a flood has already occurred. So that's what I've been using, and then now fitting now my model to those stated reports. So for example, if the UN had stated that it flooded in 2015, so I carried out now my model in 2015 in order to prove whether or not the flood occurred or not. Yes.
Yeah. So is it your sense then that the flooding is kind of flood risk is stable, or are the rains getting worse? Is the flooding getting worse, or is there a pattern to it, do you think?
Oh, so it's completely unpredictable, and that's
Okay.
the worst part of it. So given that heavy rainfall and short rainfall are causing floods to occur, it's quite difficult in order to predict. So we try to come up with a model that can be able to mitigate that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? If you would like to just put your virtual hand up, that would be fine. Anyone in the room has any questions for Alvin? Well, it was just great to hear the progress of that project. Really, really interesting results, and I hope we'll be able to find out more as your project progresses, particularly in terms of the decision making, the policy making response to that kind of work, the impact. It's so important that this kind of work has impact obviously at the local level. So it'd be really interested to see how that phase of the project develops. So hope to stay in touch. Great, thank you, Alvin. So
you're very welcome.
Next we have, so Alvin, if you want to unshare your screen, next we're going to be joined by Kelvin, I think. Hi, Kelvin, if you're, yeah. Is that right? Have I got that right? Very nice to see you again, Kelvin.
Well, good to see you as well. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for that. So yes, I guess I would just go straight to it. Let me share my screen. Awesome. Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, looking good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to pick up from where Alvin was, so the project we are currently working on, or the project being described, is the Trigger project. So it's a collaboration of Strathmore University, Trigger, TU Delft, amongst other institutions. So one of the main objectives of this project is to create products that can help African nations, or specifically African countries, that can be used in terms of be it agriculture, or be it looking at weather inputs, and also anything that can affect African nations. And on my side, I'm working on the weather index-based crop insurance. So the background of this is we are trying to create an insurance product that not only works on an indemnity basis, where you have to show your loss, then now you can move from that. But in this case, we are trying to actually help the farmers before their loss. So in this case, next. So yes, our objective is to create a crop model that is able to generate an insurance index. And seeing that it's a weather-based index, we created two models. So we created a rainfall index and a soil moisture index. So for the rainfall index, it just takes into account rainfall. So this means that for the region in study, in this case was in Gishu, we take the rainfall index, the rainfall for the specific region for a period of, we were looking at 40 years. And when it came to soil moisture, we added we went through a different route. We looked at the aquacrop model. So aquacrop model is done by Faustat. So we'll get into that in a few. So just get the idea behind this. So the idea is seeing that agriculture is big in Kenya. So agriculture contributes a majority of Kenya's GDP, and a majority of Kenya's agricultural produce comes from small-scale farmers. That's why small-scale farmers are important in this study. 75% of Kenya's produce come from these farmers. So one way to actually help them is by creating an insurance product that actually works for them. So you find that there are existing rainfall index insurance products, or rather some weather-based insurance products, only that it might be hard for you to find soil moisture index product because it had actually not gone into that much research. So the aim of this project is to enhance food security by reducing the cost of crop insurance for the farmers. If you look at how indemnity-based insurances work, so a farmer will have to, so they'll have to send an agent to the field who can actually clarify on the losses the farmer made. But in this case, we are actually trying to create a rainfall and a soil moisture model that actually looks at a farmer's land. Once it gets the region, so it gets the weather inputs. So this means you understand the climate of the region, get the weather inputs. Once you have that, you'll be able to, depending on the time of year. So for example, if a farmer plants their crops in January and they expect their harvest in, let's say, by early April. During that 4-month period, there is specific rainfall for a 4-year period. So we need that data for rainfall that has happened, for that specific period, we need the rainfall for that specific period, and that's where we get to our data sources. So in our data sources, we have satellite data, and we also have Faustat data. In this case, we were looking at yield data. So FAO actually accumulated a good amount of yield data. This is for, let's say, the past 10 years. I think it was up to 2010 or there or so. Then the aquacrop model. So the aquacrop model is also a model by Faustat. So this model helps you to simulate, to create simulations for starters of soil moisture and also create a simulation of soil yield. So the aquacrop model works in the sense that it looks at how water stress levels affect crops. So it has to take into account the type of soil you have and so on. Then you have thermo data. So thermo data is from essentially data from the Hydronet, which is a product by TU Delft, amongst other institutions. So it's part of the Trigger project. Thermo have in situ weather stations around the country. So around, it should be greater than 200 at this point. So this means that if a farmer is located in Uasin Gishu, you'll probably find around 3 to 4 weather stations around that area. So this means when it comes to data accuracy, you'll be able to, depending on the 3 weather stations that are close to this farmer, you'll be able to determine where exactly it is that, which weather stations or even an average of this. So in incorporating real-time data, that's where thermo comes in. So thermo has been in operation for the last, let's say, 6 to 7 years. So that's why they're going to be important in this study. So we move on to the correlation analysis. So for this, in order for us to do this study, we needed to look at the relationship between soil moisture content, what is referred to as the rule zone water content on this page, and also look at how rainfall affects yield. So we found a statistically significant relationship between the production and the rainfall. So we started with the rainfall, and the reason we did that was because with the rainfall data, that was easily accessible. Then when it came to the soil moisture data, we had to create a simulation using the aquacrop model, which is what I'm going to look at next. So for the rainfall, we took data from 1981. So the past, that should be around the past 39 years, seeing that this study included data up to 2020. Although with thermal data, you can get real-time data. So the reason aquacrop is here is because of the soil moisture aspect of this. So aquacrop is, like I said, it's a model that gives you the effects of your environment, but mainly the water stress levels and the effects it has to the yield. So based off of different inputs, in this case would be the type of crop you have, then mainly you'll probably have the soil characteristics. So this includes, but on a higher sense, it could include the field management, although sometimes that might be hard to find depending on the type of research you're doing. So in this case, we didn't have it per se. So the field management for that specific farm. So it's like an assumption. It's one of the assumptions that we do have. But you look at the crop, you look at the soil profile, and you look at the water levels for that specific farm. Then from this, you'll be able to generate or simulate a few of the soil moisture inputs. So number one, you'll be able to generate soil moisture. Number two, you'll be able to generate the biomass and the canopy cover. So all these are going to be important when deciding which outputs to use in creating the soil moisture index product. So we're going into the creation of the soil index. The soil index required us to look at historical data for both rainfall and soil moisture. Remember again, the area of study was Uasin Gishu, so you might, just in case you notice that the data implies that there is actually high rainfall, so it's not for the whole country because you need a specific area, and in this case it was Uasin Gishu. So in order to look at, to create the index, we first started off by looking at the different elements that we probably need. So the study was on maize crop. So for maize crop, you'll realize that it has different varieties. And this is important because the varieties have a different maturity date. So you'll find that the maturity date for maize varieties take between 120 to 210 days. So this is significant in your study because we divided our maturity, not really our maturity days, but our germination period or our growth period into three phases. We have germination, growth, and flowering. So each maize variety has its own breakdown. So you'll find there's a different, for example, pH1, what you see on the right, what you see on the right, pH1 takes 120 days. 20 of those days in germination, 70 in growth, and 30 in the flowering period. So this means that the germination period, when you look at how maize grows, the germination period is usually where it's more sensitive in terms of water levels. Then when you look at the growth period, it might not need that much water or rain during this period, and during the flowering, this is essentially the harvesting period. So that's why this breakdown was important. So our model takes in play the maize variety and when the farmer planted. So when you're going out to the field, or rather when you're going out to actually get the users of the product, the farmer has to input when they're growing. So for example, if the farmer inputs they're growing pH1 and they're growing in January, that's 120 days. So that means that it's going to take 4 months. So that means the first 20 days from January 1st to January 20th is going to be germination. Then the next 70 days, that's probably between mid-Jan all the way to mid-March for growth, then flowering, that's the end of April. That's what we have here, the period analysis. So what you have here is the period analysis for soil moisture. So the model I'm presenting right now is just the soil moisture model, not the rainfall one. So for the soil moisture, you'll find that soil moisture never goes below, never gets to zero. That's the other thing, and one of the other reasons soil moisture is an improvement on the rainfall index. So for soil moisture, it goes between, or rather the study that we looked at was between 0.18 and 0.3. So I won't get into too much of the technical details for this, but I just wanted to get a brief idea of what went about creating the soil moisture analysis. So once we have this, so in this case, if you can look at the dates, the first date there, it implies that the farmer selected their start date as the 3rd of March 2020. So depending on the variety of maize they chose, it's going to select data over the past 39 years from 1981 to 2010 for that specific variety and for that specific period. So this means that by the time you're trying to calculate the triggers, so remember you're trying to calculate, at the end of this analysis, you're calculating a trigger where you're going to say that if a farmer's soil moisture goes below a certain level, it means that they are due to a payout, because that's ideally what insurance does. But the only difference in this case is we are going to preempt the loss or the loss of yield based on different weather inputs. So in this case, we had to calculate the dry days. So our dry days was soil moisture below a certain level. So if you take into account that somebody's growth germination period was, let's say, January, and you know that Kenya, let's say, has 2 specific rainfall seasons, around March, April there, and towards the end of the year. So if somebody started growing in January, for starters, that might have been, depending on the region, it could be a mistake or it could be okay. But then again, the data will tell you that from 1981 to 2019, the rainfall, the soil moisture for this specific place has been this amount. So now fixing the data for that year, and now we are looking at a very large period. And so the dry days was, out of the historical figures we've had, how many days are below a certain limit? So when we get, for example, if you look at 1981, the count of dry days became 17. So it means that there were 17 days that followed each other, consecutively rather, that had a period or a dry day period. So in our case, that would amount to a trigger. So our trigger calculation was, we were looking at the 39-year period, and we did the mean for the daily soil moisture and the amount that went below. So for example, anywhere that you see a 1 meant a trigger. Now, that is important for the from the actuarial sense, in the sense that when you get to creating now the model, which is the pricing, which is what I will go to next. So the pricing requires that. So for example, in the period of the 39 years that we had, how many days would this farmer that we have today, let's say planting between January and April, how many of those days would they have hit the trigger, in essence, calling for a payout? So that's what we had. And so that's what you use to calculate our incidence rate. And our incidence rate is going to be important in calculating the premium, because our end goal is a crop insurance product, which is going to be determined by a premium. So here we'll be looking at the average yield per hectare. So we have the price, we have the different, so we're going to get the assumptions, but right now we have the area planted. So the farmer inputs, let's say I'm planting 1 acre. Then we, based on the inputs that they give us, so when they are planting, so we get the period. From that, we get the trigger. Then from that, we get our maize price. So maize price is an assumption based off of the previous year of study. So in this case, we went to 2,500, although it ranges between 2,500 to 4,096, or at least that's for the past, that's probably for the past 5 years or 10 years. So that's a thing we looked at. So the model creation, this is what you have on the right is how it would look like. So the farmer name, the region, and the maize variety. Then the planting date, because that's also important, and the area they're planted. So the full cover premium that you see here is part of the, is based off of the inputs that you do see there. Then this is, so here we see what actually goes into the, what rather informs the specific your output. So you have your inputs, and we have a visualizations of the different soil moisture inputs that's important to your study. So the assumptions made in this case was that the price of a 90 kg bag of maize is 2,500. So when it comes to discount rate and the loading factor, it's an industry question. So it depends with the insurer. So you find that not only is our product targeted at the mwananchi, at the farmer, but also targeted to the insurance companies as the shareholders, because we would need them to actually accept and have this type of insurance running. So they are part of shareholders, and that's why a big part of this study involves talking to the insurance regulatory authority, IRA, to look at the models, to look at what was created and how that can be improved. So yes, so actually I feel like that has to be the sum of it in terms of what went into the creation of the soil index. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelvin. That's a really fascinating insight into what is a very kind of thorny problem. And we have some questions in Slido, so I'll just move over to see the questions. So a couple of questions from Mark, saying, first of all, what IoT programming technology do you use? A question mark, Node-RED, what's an IoT?
Awesome, that's actually a very good question, and another part of something that we're actually trying to look at. So when it gets to the real-time soil moisture data, we have thermal data for that. So the way thermal data collects soil moisture, they use some data collection device. So it needs to be implanted in the soil that it collects the soil moisture. So that's the thermal side. For us, we only get the data. We don't actually have the actual device. So we just get the data from the sites. So that's why. Although another part of this project that would really involve IoT is when it gets to the field agents, they would probably require that that tool specifically for a farmer. But yes.
Okay, and a follow-up question, wondering what big data platforms you use, and what data pipeline technology do you use? Databricks? Do you need NoSQL? What's your platform?
I would say, okay, so I put it like this. When you're talking deployment here, and we have to create a data pipeline for this. So HydroNet, I wouldn't really be sure of how HydroNet build the system, because we just get the APIs to access the data. Okay. But the system, yeah, so we really rely on APIs to access the data.
Yeah. And then there's one question which is more general, which maybe could also be for Alvin and Lorna as well. How do you think data science will solve the problems in the current global pandemic?
That's a good question.
Solve all our problems.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know from John Olokuru that the team has been involved in some of the COVID-19 modeling for the government.
Yes, and maybe I can even speak a bit about that.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask Joseph to go into that. Yeah, he was the
Hi,
one.
Joseph.
Yeah, so Joseph here, data scientist, Strathmore. So yeah, I mean, we've been involved with work with the Ministry of Health around modeling COVID-19. I would say some of the impacts that we've had are around, one, ensuring that the health system is not overwhelmed. So being able to do predictive modeling that can already help government start controlling the spread of the disease. And we've actually done quite a bit on that, and also beyond just that, because COVID has shown that it basically can stretch the health system in Kenya. So in preparation for like future events or anything else that may come, we've been involved with the universal healthcare that the government is trying to launch in the country. So a lot of preparation in terms of looking at the facilities, whether they're well equipped, looking at areas that probably need more focus, to also guide the government in resource allocation. So I think data science is everywhere, and it can play a critical part, even from staffing, which is a very big issue, to things such as medication and planning, disaster modeling. So I see data science being applied practically anywhere. So yeah, but those are some of the things that we're trying to do together with the government.
Thank you very much. We might come back to do more discussion about that, I suspect. Great. So yeah, thank you very much, Kelvin. A fascinating insight into that piece of work, and something that I think resonates across several sectors, and certainly some of the work going on here in Bristol as well. So we're moving into our next presentation, which I think is Jeremy and Joseph together. Is that right? Or
so it'll be Jeremy first, then
Jeremy first. Great.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I hope you can see me.
Yeah.
My name is Jeremy, and I also work at Strathmore at iLab. I'm also a junior data analyst here. I am also a beneficiary of the one of the interns here. So I started out as an intern here, so I'm actually enjoying my time here. And so today I'm going to present to you about using machine learning algorithms to determine adverse weather conditions. So I hope you can see my screen. I hope it's clear. Can it be seen?
Yes, that looks great.
Okay then. So by adverse weather conditions, I mean I'm narrowing down to flooding and drought in Kenya specifically. And yeah, so the definitions. So drought is a period where there is prolonged shortages of water supply, and it's also accompanied by high temperatures, especially in Africa. For floods, this is where water overflows over, well, land, which is usually normally dry. These two conditions usually lead to death and loss of property. As we have seen in the news and also in the UN, droughts and floods are a major bother to the economy and also to the citizens of any nation. Now, the objectives of this study. So this study was meant to actually detect adverse weather conditions, that is drought and floods, using machine learning algorithms. And also we were to use machine learning algorithms to actually forecast these future weather conditions and actually prepare for them beforehand. And this is just a visual representation showing the how temperature varies from place to place in Africa. As you can see there in our map, we have Kenya over here. I hope it's clear. So as you can see, the red, the way this color it goes to deepening red, that shows that the areas are usually hot. And as you can see, Africa is in the tropics, and therefore it usually is subject to tropical climatic conditions. So the datasets we used for this study. So to do this analysis, we used satellite weather data. We used weather station data, and we also used climatic model simulations to actually see if our algorithms were accurately capturing these abnormalities or droughts and floods. So for floods, we chose Ahero. So Ahero is a sub-county found in Kisumu County, and it's usually prone to flooding because of the Nyando Basin River, which usually breaks its banks due to heavy precipitation levels. And in the past, this flooding in Ahero has led to the deaths of many people and also displacement of many residents over there. Also recently, when schools were resuming for COVID, schools could not resume because in Ahero, the schools were technically submerged underwater. So flooding is a real problem in Ahero. And the period of study was from 1992 to 2020. And the modeling was done on a monthly basis. And to detect these flooding occurrences, we used outlier-based detection algorithms. And we used them because our hypothesis was flooding occurrences, by definition, are outliers. And a characteristic of outliers is that they are either extremely high or extremely low values. And they're usually also characterized with low frequency occurrences. So they don't occur as much. They are not the norm in the area. So let's just dive a bit into the algorithms used for this study. So we used the cluster-based local outlier factor, we used the histogram-based outlier detection, the isolation forest, and the k-nearest neighbors. So now we'll go to why we actually chose them. So for the histogram-based outlier detection, so when you plot a histogram, it's usually a function of density and observations. And given that outliers are extremely high values, meaning that they're extremely high observations, and they're of low frequencies, just like in histograms, we can actually pick them out based on a histogram plot. So that's what the histogram-based outlier detection does. We now go to the cluster-based local outlier factor. So when you plot data in a Euclidean space or in an X and Y plane, we see that data exists in clusters, meaning that observations which are similar or close to the norm are usually lumped together. But for outliers, they are loners, they stand alone, and therefore the algorithm picks those loners out. And in our case, we now pick out those extremely high precipitation values. For the k-nearest neighbors, data points with similar characteristics usually appear in close proximity to each other. But outliers, given that they do not have similar characteristics with the ordinary data, they are usually loners, and they are also picked out by the algorithm. And then you go to the isolation forest. So normal forests, that is the decision trees, the random forest, usually focus on the normal observations, but for the isolation forest, it is designed to focus on the anomalies only, and therefore it will not waste computing power focusing on the normal observations. Rather, it will focus on the extremely high values of rainfall in Ahero, which lead to flooding. As per the results, so we found that the best model for predicting, for prediction and detection of floods was the histogram-based outlier detection algorithm. As seen from this table here, we can see that the histogram-based algorithm captures 63.16% of the flooding instances for both the weather station, and for the CHAPS dataset, it captures 63.33%. So that means it captures majority of the flooding occurrences more accurately compared to the cluster-based algorithm, the isolation forest, and the k-nearest neighbors. We now go to drought. So to capture drought, our main focus was to look at Wajir, because in the news we have seen in the past that many people are dying because of drought over there, shortages of water, loss of livestock, and also, death of children, which is quite sad. And the duration of the study was also from 1992 to the year 2020. And the frequency was also done in monthly. So we did drought detection using neural networks. So to do these neural networks, we just used, it was a 2-layered neural network with one input and one hidden and one, so we had one input and 8 hidden layers. So that's what we used to actually detect these drought occurrences. And the variables we used for our study were maximum temperature, minimum temperature, and precipitation. And on training and testing this neural network, we found that it actually had an accuracy of 73% in detecting droughts. And just to highlight some of the policy applications of what we are doing, as per the neural network and the flooding algorithms, they will be meant to actually create an early drought and flood warning system. And also, once we actually forecast the future weather conditions, we'll actually use machine learning to generate more accurate long-term weather forecasts. Yeah, because well, the global climatic models used to model forecast are not usually that accurate for African nations. And just to discuss about the data sources that we used, so we used ground data, which were gotten from the Wajir and Ahero weather stations. And as per the satellite datasets, we used Thamsat satellite datasets and also CHAPS satellite datasets. And also for the climatic model simulations, we use the Mock-Hadley model because it's in literature, it's the most recommended one. And that's it on my end when it comes to adverse weather conditions detection in Kenya using machine learning. Thank you. And it has been a pleasure presenting my work. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Really interesting stuff, and obviously a great internship project.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good internship.
Yeah, really, really good. Have you been able to connect with any policy makers or kind of decision makers who are working in those regions, or communicate your work to them?
So we are working with TAMO since they are now also giving us their real ground data. So I can quantify TAMO as one of the government organizations we are working with. We are also working with CPIT, who actually will use this work to publish related projects, because they are trying to check if these global climatic models are best for modeling African climate here.
Yeah, really, really interesting. You'll be interested to know that just last week, the Jean Golding Institute helped to host a UK Meteorological Office hackathon, looking at climate change and the relationship between climate change and all kinds of kind of social issues, including flooding and animal migration and all kinds of things. And we hope to be able to publish the outputs from some of those soon. So yeah, really, really hot topic, and fantastic to see that the team is engaged in that. Does anyone else have any questions for Jeremy? I could chat for too long, but it doesn't have to be all about my voice. If not, then let's move on to our final presentation. Thank you again, Jeremy, for that. Really great, which is Joseph. So Jeremy, if you want to unshare your screen, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Allow me to present with my video off. It's been misbehaving, so I know I might drop off, so because of my bandwidth, but yeah. So thank you. So what I'll be talking about is another project that we are actually currently doing together with Bristol University on smart farming. We've called it Kilimo Smart, but it's related to something bigger that we're also hoping to grow. And the idea behind it is to be able to help farmers around the country to basically become better with their agricultural practices, and also give them an avenue in which they can also showcase their products. So as part of this project, we are focusing largely on tomato farmers just for the first kind of pilot stage. And here, what I have on the screen is just a basic statistics that are around, and the reason why we try to narrow down to tomato farmers. Because tomatoes is a very big part. I think in 2018, it was the second largest export vegetable in Kenya, but it also plays a very critical part in everyday preparation of food in a Kenyan domestic household. And according to the Journal of Natural Sciences and Research study that was conducted in 2020, they did a survey of tomato farmers, and what they found is that 91% of farmers observed some sort of fungal wilting that was infecting their tomatoes. And from this, of 58% of the sampled farmers recorded that the yield dropped between 1 to 10%. Now, that may not be significant as such if we just look at the numbers by itself, but consider that also farmers are facing other issues, including the loss of revenue because of price drops. So even that 1 to 10% has a large impact, economic impact towards the farmers planning and being able to do other household activities. Now, from this survey, they also found that the most injurious disease to the farmers was late blight. And what that, I mean, but when we looked around and we saw some of these issues, we also figured that there is also opportunity to kind of tap in and help these farmers. So one of the main challenges is, of course, the lack of information. And what tends to happen is when farmers discover that these diseases are affecting their crops, they sometimes lean towards harmful chemicals that they try to use. Some, of course, are made by themselves in the sense that because of the creativity that they have gathered across the years, they're able to put together some herbicides from poisonous plants, which are also poisonous, of course, to insects, and then try to apply them. Or they tend to use harmful chemicals that at the end of the day, when the tomato fruit has already formed, it's not usually advisable to actually use them. And so they end up staying within the tomato fruit and then ends up on plates of hundreds of people who enjoy tomatoes, right? And so that lack of information becomes a gap that we can actually come in and help to fill. And what makes it worse is not only just the identification of the disease, but also the linkage to extension services. And so as part of the project, what we were thinking was to be able to bring together a farm management system, which is very simple for farmers to use, that can not only help them in being able to identify diseases, but also links them to extension services that can then help in actually addressing some of the issues that the farmers face. And towards the end, I'll talk a bit more towards how we're thinking of scaling the idea just beyond these two simple facts, and also the other aspects of the projects that we also were thinking about. So the opportunity comes in terms of just being able to control pests and diseases is the utilization of artificial intelligence in recognizing some of these plants and diseases and being able to give more information about the symptoms and the possible remedies, which is depicted by the image on the right, right? And the reason why this is becoming this is a very good opportunity is because we've seen growing an increase in internet penetration across the country. Mobile phones are also proliferating in the market, and not just the ordinary phones, but also smartphones. And so as we see that, we see an opportunity to be able to give a farmer the opportunity to use low-cost phones that do not necessarily take high-resolution cameras, but the AI can actually work to help improve that and be able to identify different pests and diseases within the crops. And so also the availability of low-cost computing power also aids us in developing the algorithms that are required to actually run these platforms and enable farmers to get back the information that they require. So in the beginning, it's an app that one helps the farmer be able to just simply take a photo of the diseased leaf, and then the AI will be able to process that image and give symptoms and more information and education about it. But beyond that, be able to also link them to extension services, people where they can get probably the appropriate herbicides or pesticides to deal with these issues. And so from our end, because this is the first phase of the project, what we're trying to do is we're trying to first develop the AI platform behind it, whereby we're utilizing low resolution images and trying to feed this data into algorithms. And of course, the method that we have chosen to use for this algorithm is transfer learning. So we're going to be using deep learning algorithms such as ResNet, DenseNet, to be able to classify these images according to the disease type. And so, of course, the initial stage is to test out the different algorithms, be able to pick the best one from them. And then beyond that, move into the next stage, which is the validation stage. Now, in the validation step here, we will work with farmers on the ground. So we'll go on the ground to different farms in different parts and be able to connect with the farmers and take local images from the farms and test out our algorithms on the ground. So it's not just the desktop research that we're doing, whereby we develop the algorithm, we have very nice numbers, but we want to test it in the field and see how applicable it is on the actual ground and how well it actually works, right? And then beyond this, okay, so yeah, so after we do that, here's a sample of some of the diseases that we're looking at and some of the plants that are there, and that's what we will be using. We'll be testing some algorithms. So like I mentioned, this is still a project that is ongoing, so we still don't have the stats yet. You can see DenseNet 169 is highlighted because in a previous study that we tried this on maize, it was the best model, but we will also test it now on our current data set. Now, I mentioned earlier that we want to go beyond just identifying and linking the app with extension services. But the idea is to also have other services that the farmer can use. And what that does is that it enables one, further research on our side, because we come from an academic background, to be able to see how probably things are, how farming is happening, considering accounting, considering labor management, employment, crop management, and the rest. But back to the farmer, what this does is it creates an interesting opportunity to enable farmers to lobby, in the sense that when you have data from multiple farmers that shows, for example, the occurrence of diseases across a particular region, it can help governments also start putting together resources to be able to address issues, because they actually have tangible data that shows that this is a collective issue. More to that, as you can see on the right, there's something around accounting and the rest. So what we're looking at is also a lot of farmers complain about the cost of inputs and how that contributes then to increasing the prices of the final product, which here we say common mwananchi, which is just basically the citizen starts suffering. So by collecting this data, again, it enables them to have lobbying power that shows that, hey, it's not actually just a problem for a few, but it's a problem across many. And so they have that voice and the information backing them to say that, hey, this is actually an issue. And of course, there are other things we've thought about that may go into being also, I mean, helping the farmer also be able to plan better financially and do things such as crop yield prediction, because as part of the project, we are also incorporating things such as farm boundary mapping, which basically serves as an input to future algorithms that we'll be using, and also can be scaled and used in conjunction with what Kelvin had presented earlier for insurance, for an insurance product, whereby combining this information with GIS and other stuff, we can actually create insurance products from this. And so also helping the farmer to be protected against certain things that may come up. And that's the vision that we have. And so we've started small with the AI crop disease detection. There are other conversations that we're having with national bodies on this for other crops as well. So reaching out with more partners, I mean, with our partners, and being able to reach the farmers. And so that's how we are progressing. And yeah, so that's me. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I'll welcome any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Joseph. That's a great overview of the project, and it's also particularly nice to hear the progress of it, given that it's a collaborative project as well with our data scientist Emma Kuitz, who I know has presented at an event for you recently in Strathmore as well. I'm interested in how you've identified your community of farmers to participate in the kind of validation, the testing phase. Do you have a particular group that you work with or a particular region?
So it's not a particular region, but we do have agencies and bodies that we are in communication with. And so we will be working with them to be able to identify the farmers that are probably best suited for this project. And so that's how we will be working. I mean, identifying the farmers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's through partners.
How does that work then? Do you get them all together to do a training session, or do you train field workers to go out and talk to them individually?
So yes, it will be going to the field and training people to go to the field and talk to the different farmers and be able to see how the farming is done and just understand the setup, and also a few questions here and there for them. That's how we are planning it. Yeah.
Yeah, and presumably they'll be really useful. It'd be really useful to get feedback from them about the user interface as well,
Yes,
won't it?
for sure.
I know from projects that I've been involved in, I think I've got it spot on, and then I take it out into the field, and there's a real I get really positive help with how to make it more user friendly.
For sure, yeah. Once they test it out, they're like, oh, okay, this doesn't make sense. Or you can even see the difficulty in which they have using it. It becomes, you make a few changes here, there. So it's iterative, yeah.
Yeah, no, really, really interesting. Do we have any other questions from the room?